and are shared profusely, and hopefully we can answer a lot of those questions and kind of get everybody on the same page. So first thing I'll update everybody about is the total force update. We started total force and recruiting school in 2017, November 2017, and here we are, April 21st, 2021, and total force is starting to take more of a shape. A great thing. So on 26 April, our new total force recruiting course will be released. Start the first class here, so 5 days. Next week, I'll be down there visiting with for the senior leader conference, and as well seeing the commander and the chief over there at the 44th Training Squadron to kind of discuss our way forward and where we go. I ask all of you at this point, as total force is up, rolling, where are we doing good and where do we need improvement? And I mean, that's a challenge for all you senior NCOs out there. What are the areas that we're doing well in? What are the areas that we need improvement? May 17th, myself and the other two functionals for the reserve and the guard component are going to travel out to the 61st Squadron. They're doing a semi-annual, and we're going to visit those guys and talk about what's working, what's not working. This is a bridge we all built together. So I need your assistance. I need your input. And you guys got my email, kevin.daigle.1. I mean, anything you want to share, please reach out. 3G, right? I've been on the 3G journey for a minute. It's funny because it feels like I've been hearing about 3G since I was a flight chief. It's been around for a minute. We're slowly making this transition, and understand that it is a very slow, purposeful transition. And just some of the things that have happened, that are happening and have happened that are going to kind of push us into the 3G. The newest is the ADAR selection model. So you guys are all familiar with DSD, developmental special duty, right? And you're vectored from your wings. And that's how manpower goes. The wings vector, you go to AFPC collects all the names, forward them over to AATC gathers the list, sends it to AFRS screens it. The RSX team screens them. It's like folks that are qualified. So SimSAF, Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, has at first, she has an extreme value for what we do in the force development realm, and us developing the new talent and bringing in the new airmen. And she felt that there was better emphasis to place on the special duty arenas, specifically the force generation piece. And when we talk force generation, we're talking, MTIs, recruiters, MTLs, folks that are on the front line and bringing in new airmen, training new airmen for the Air Force. So right now they're in the midst of putting together a developmental program for special duty, for specifically force generation airmen. And it's going to move towards, and you guys have may started seeing these things kind of come to fruition. It's going to move to my vector. And the goal is, and will we get to the end state and how fast we get there is really determined by how well we can put a plan together to make sure everything's staffed, the volunteers, as well as the non-volunteers, because it'll have two paths. So you're going to start seeing a lot of things that you do and your airmen do are going to start drafting towards my vector. My goal is to get our MOIs and get our assignment processes into my vector. Functional Air Force, and you guys can read the AFI 362640 is the enlisted development AFI, right? And so this is already carried out by most career fields. And I think our last conversation we had with the top three, we talked about the EDT, the enlisted development team. as we've formed the EDT and we're working the vectoring processes and we're working the developmental step processes, you're going to see a lot of that rolls into my vector, and it's going to be a lot of the communication tools that we have. So you may get an email that says, hey, this is what you've been vectored towards. Do you want to volunteer for it? Right? Just the same as functional Air Force. And understand that that's going to be a piece of the 3G AFSC. As we go to norm with a operational AFSC and not a special duty AFSC, we start to follow the rules of the Air Force and carry in line. So you're going to see emails. Again, my goal is to have the MOI put in there. I used my vector for the last EWI. If you guys aren't familiar with that, the Education with Industry board that we held, and it worked like a champ, right? So we sent it out on my vector. Everybody that was eligible, I believe all of AFRS got the email for Education with Industry, right? And individuals submitted their packages, then it's automatically routed to the commander and to the superintendent. Then it comes up to CFM level, then I review it, then it went out to AFIT, who boarded all the packages. So all the processes there are really outlined and streamlined. It's not as much old school spreadsheets and PDFs that you have to digitally sign and forward. Everything will be captured and will be stored in my vector. So if you haven't gotten familiar with my vector, please log in, make sure you have an account, because for some reason there's still some folks out there that don't have accounts. Log in. In there, you can select your mentors, your mentees. You know, there's a lot of information there. It'll capture everything in your records, as well as it gives you a space to put additional things. So for instance, like it'll capture you went to the Senior NCO Academy. It'll capture, your ALS. It'll capture your tech schools, but it doesn't necessarily capture that you were distinguished graduate. It doesn't capture that you were, a Levito or so there's places for all this stuff. There's places for you to put your awards in there. And so as the vectoring process goes on, understand that whoever's on that board at that point in time, they're looking at that complete record. So it's highly encouraged that you go in there and put all your information in. Like I said, the MOI is working with Miss Birch at ATC right now to get our MOIs put in there, just to simplify the process. And it'll be an email that comes up to you at your point in time, and it'll say, hey, do you want to stay in recruiting? And you'll say yes or no. And we're determining right now, do we want to put all the jobs that you want to volunteer for, how exactly, what's the nut and bolts look like? But this will be the part where you make that decision of, okay, this is what I want to do. It'll go shoot off to your commander. Your commander will put their comments in. Your chief will put their comments in, and it'll go up to AFRS, right? Or excuse me, ATC, to Ms. Birch. So a lot of just updating and catching our career field up with functional Air Force. EWI. So we jumped on board with Education with Industry at the very last minute. It was December, mid-December, right before Christmas. And I just so happened to come across an email from headquarters Air Force A1D, who does all the enlisted development. And I asked a question like, hey, how do we get in EWI? Because I think there's some value that brings with sending our folks out to industry and learning some tips and tricks of what goes on in the talent acquisition, talent management world. And so we got the 8R signifier onto the board. So 86 people were awarded. There were 12 selected. So we submitted 16 folks, right? So we had a really good turnout. And I'll just give you guys some of my feedback as senior NCOs as I was reviewing the packages. And these are things to kind of keep in mind in the development of our airmen and our own development style. When I was reviewing the packages, we use a lot of impact in awards. And what I mean by that is, depth 12 people, 200%, top recruit of the quarter, right? And that top recruit of the quarter being an impact, we got to understand the people that boarded these packages were all AFIT. they were, these are a majority of them have engineering degrees, right? So how do we tie and how do we create the impact in what we do? And I think that's super important when it comes to our writing, is that we're able to communicate exactly what the impact was of what the airman did. The airman being the top, recruiter of the quarter, that's an award. And he got an award for something. What was that something that he did, right? And having awards in the packages is not bad, but we've got to dive into what exactly, what is it that Airman Smith did that reflects against the National Defense Strategy, the NDS, the NDAA. Like, what is it that's tying big Air Force, what we do in the Air Force to that person, and the reason why they should be accepted to education with industry. Talk about their moxie, what's their ability to adapt, learn information, adapt new processes. I don't want to say fix things because that has a negative connotation, but that ability to actually create change and has a change mindset. So super important. We have to work on our ability to write. It's not just about how many awards we have, and the awards are great, but at the end of the day, it's about that airman's ability to influence change. 3G. So, and looking now at our manning, and me and Chief Rawls, you guys had some time with me yesterday, where this is a very, very narrow bridge, and we don't want to switch to the 3G too fast, because understand right now, as a special duty, we fall under there's 9,000 billets that just I say they fall under the Air Force. They fall under SimSAF, that we don't promote to a billet. We promote to an average of the Air Force. So how that kind of works is, whenever the Air Force promotes, they look at what our manning is, how are we, staffed. I mean, and they'll promote to, usually it's the Air Force average. I mean, if there's a few months we fell right below it, and so there's donor AFSCs, and then there's AFSCs that are going surplus, and sometimes we're a donor, sometimes we're a surplus, just looking at what the Air Force is trying to get and where other career fields are manned. Once we go to 3G, we actually promote to the billet, right? So that means if we have 140 mass sergeants and we're authorized 130, we're not going to see a promotion, right? And everybody's like, whoa, I'm leaving, I'm jumping ship. Don't. And that's why we haven't changed yet, right? As we're slowly guiding this ship on track, we want to make sure that purposefully we are pulling the levers to make sure that it's not a detriment of the airman, right? So will 3G come online within the next year? I can't answer that. It really depends on what our manning starts to look like. I mean, excuse me, our manning is phenomenal. I'm sure Chief Ross shared that with you guys. We just hit 100% in tier 2. I mean, I've been in recruiting service for 19 years, and I've never seen 100% manning in tier 2, right? That's pretty amazing. And that's by December this year, we'll hit 100% with all our gains and loss rosters. By December this year, we hit 100%, which is pretty amazing. You'll see that as we go along and we follow this 3G path, we will get there. I'm not one just to make a sudden, let's turn it on and hope for the best. And I'm sure you can all appreciate that, because I think that it's got to be purposeful. And so as we go along, and you'll see we have 7 chief promotions this year. I think we're probably set for a few more. Looks like my computer's going off. Yeah. as we got 7 chief promotions, we got our senior promotions, and it's in a functional career field, it flows up that way, right? You're by which you're authorized and which you're authorized and which your mandate. Talked about the schoolhouse. Talked about total force. We got the total force recruiting council coming up next week. What's on you guys' mind? Got 40 of you here. What do you guys want to talk about?
All right, Chief, we got a couple questions that came in so far. Please continue to post questions in the chat. Get them to me and Sergeant Walker. Sergeant Walker's kind of feeding me the questions. First one is, you mentioned Chief Rawls yesterday. I'm not sure if you had a chance to check out the talk he had with us, but there was a couple of key items. You already brought one up in regards to the promoting to the billets, and that being a LIMFAC. Another one that he had mentioned was the duty titles mattered when it came to the boards, when he was talking about the board process. So, we've got some differences in some areas. One, he mentioned, we've got superintendent of Alaska recruiting in one area, which we know is overseas flight chief. Whereas in another area, we've got operations flight chief, who on paper, superintendent looks better than flight chief, right? So how do we correctly convey that scope of responsibility that the board charge is talking about, where an operations flight chief has, each MEPS is its own team echelon plus its operations team. So obviously their scope is maybe a little bit larger. Chief Rawls mentioned you guys are in the process of developing some standardization with that. Can you elaborate?
Yes. So we're actually drafting 362617 right now, and for all you old heads out there, it used to be called the Career Recruiter Workforce. Back when we had an 8R3, and once you became a flight chief, you signed this piece of paper that said, "I'm now a career recruiter." We're bringing this instruction back to life, but not so much for a career recruiter force, but a enlisted development piece. And that's, I think, a lot where the vectoring comes in, and meeting the EDT boards, as well as your volunteering for assignments, and standardizing. So one of the roles of the CFM is ensure that they're standardized duty titles, right? And so whenever I get the UMD and I've got to search it, say I'm looking for senior master sergeant selects, right, or I'm looking for flight chiefs, and I go to filter, because all I have is an Excel spreadsheet. I go to filter it. I've got 90 different duty titles for a flight chief. I've seen like B flight chief, and I've seen enlisted accessions flight chief, and there's EA flight chief, and then there's officer flight chief. I mean, so there's all these different. So we're trying to grasp this, and that's kind of what the AFI is going to do. It's going to dictate exactly what the you guys are familiar with the career pyramids, where you start at the bottom, and then, the different positions and go with different ranks and different responsibilities. So that's all going to be outlined within this AFI. My goal is to have this out by June, and live. And we're looking at just the different requirements, and like any AFSC, like how do you become a pro super on the flight line? What is a requirement, right? To be the pro super on the flight line, usually you got to be a senior master sergeant, right? And you have to have certain experience. They're not going to take a senior master sergeant who was the personnelist in the commander's support staff. They want, for a pro super, they want a maintainer that has this XYZ experience. They'll probably wear an expediter. They'll probably wear a flight chief. And so trying to standardize this and align us more with functional Air Force, because I think we strayed a little bit off from that, especially when it comes to duty titles. I mean, yeah, they are important. At the same time, it's whenever you have a system where you volunteer by location, you lose a piece of duty titles, right? Because what's more important? Is it the duty title or is it the location? And I'll share with you guys this last assignment. I mean, you guys, everybody that was qualified for an assignment, I know got the email from Ms. Birch. I had 29 people, that were qualified for that window, right? That time on station at 3 years, I only had 3 volunteers, and then 2 of them weren't qualified, right? So I share that with you because a lot of it's about opportunity. The jobs sometimes are disguised by maybe not a sexy location. Maybe it's not Cocoa Beach, Florida. Maybe it's in Washington D.C. you know, and so you really got to look at those pieces. And I think when it comes to when we look at the big EDT piece and the vectoring piece, we're going to look at like, where's their talents? Where would Senior Master Sergeant Procaccino, where would he fit best? And I say your name, Jace, just because you're right there. Where would you fit best? And that's where you're going to get an email through my vector that says, hey, you've been vectored for this position. Do you volunteer? Right? And then it's the opportunities in your hands, whether or not you volunteer. Good question, though.
Thank you, Chief. We just got a follow-up that ties into that. So on the importance of duty titles, for individuals that serve an extended amount of time in an interim role, i.e., spending 6, 8, 12 months as an interim flight chief, what are your thoughts on allowing those individuals to put that on their EPR as an official duty title?
So interim.
You got muted, Chief.
Sorry about that, guys. That was me.
No worries.
So interim role. So for tier 3 and above, right? The only person that can authorize, that can assign you to it, the career recruiting piece is General Thomas, right? So your commander saying like, hey, I need him to go run this flight. Like there's a level of responsibility that's levied down. If we allow the interim role to be acknowledged as a full assignment, right? You got to really look at the second, third order effects there, right? Just because Jace is local and I'm sick and he takes over my job, does that make him the best qualified? Is he the most qualified for the position, right? Or is Jace selected to man the hatch while I'm down? And so it's a really sensitive topic. I mean, we're dealing with 2,300 people, right? And of course, with that comes a lot of feelings and a lot of emotions. So we've got to really, redact that out of the situation and look at, okay, is this the best situation? Is this the best move for this situation? If I'm down and I need, Senior Procaccino to come run, A1, then yeah, absolutely. Giving him credit for it. And I don't even want to use the word credit because that sounds like, is anybody here in it for more than just what I'm supposed to do? This is what we need, right? And this really starts to play into that piece of, it's a sticky situation, no matter how you look at it. Whether or not the SURF is changed through the 2096 process, I think really relies on the commander, because I've had positions that I stepped up to do, and the commander 2096 it and put it on my RIP, my SURF, right? But if Jace comes and watches, the A1 office for 3 days because I'm on leave, are we going to change his SURF? Does that make sense? So that's really where it gets sticky, is time, and we have to identify like, okay, what's the amount of time? We send him here for 3 years. Yeah, I mean, we probably should change his SURF. Hopefully that wasn't a too convoluted answer for you, but it's a really sticky situation.
No, that's perfect. And I agree. And sometimes second and third order effects, let's say you have a tech sergeant that filled that role and there's not enough billets to move that person to a tech sergeant or to a flight chief position next. Well, how come on your SURF it says you were a flight chief and you were demoted to MEPS liaison or squadron trainer or something like that? What happened? So you bring up a great point, Chief. Thank you. Next question is, with regards to promotion rates, we've seen a minimal number of senior stripes in the past 2 years. What do you foresee happening in the years to come?
So, I'll use the year I went via a pro suit. There was 17 senior retirements that year. The year I went to be a pro suit, right? Out of 27 production superintendents, 17 of them punched in 1 year, right? So you're gonna automatically see just an influx of promotions, right, to fill the positions. We're younger. The Air Force as a whole is younger than it's ever been. You know, so we have to think about it. It's not just us that are having this cyclical problem. I mean, you have AFSCs, you know, the cops, I mean, are seeing minimal, and that's the largest career field in the Air Force, right? Just because we're younger than we've ever been. And so what's happening is, you know, I get promoted to senior at a young age, and I make senior at, you know, 15, 16 years in the Air Force, right? Depending on where those chief, and it goes back to the promotion process, guys, the chief authorizations and, you know, authorized and inventory, if you're unbalanced, you're not going to see promotion. So we should continue to see our 7 to 8, maybe 9, depending on retirements. I mean, if all the seniors next week say, I'm retiring, I'm pulling jocks, guess what? We're going to have a big year. But that's across all Air Force. And, you know, that's our problem right now is we have a real big bathtub around the staff sergeant, tech sergeant level, Air Force wide, right? And, you know, it's sitting in this office with, you know, Mr. Batdorf, who's our training guru. Every AFSC comes to us and they're like, hey, I need like 80 more seats. I'm like, well, you do, but you're 180% in E1 through E3. You're 60% in E5 and E6. And then you're 100 plus on every rank above E6, right? So it comes to beg the question, why are airmen leaving at the E5 and E6 rate, right? That's really what we're talking about here. So we've got to get down to that bottom answer, the airmen we lead. That's the problem we really have to solve. You know, then we can stabilize, and as you promote through years. I mean, that's the whole reason, you know, you guys, you know, there's so many, you have to serve so many years before you're eligible for promotion to a certain rank, right? And it's to keep that career trajectory.
Awesome. Thank you, Chief. Follow up, and you kind of touched on it a little bit. It starts at the Chief Master Sergeant rank. There have been talks about reducing the number of cross-flow chiefs within recruiting service. How do you foresee that playing a role with promotion numbers within recruiting service?
So, and we got to be clear about this, because this is where a lot of feelings get involved, right? This is not a cross-flow, non-cross-flow thing. It's not. And we had a bunch of cross-flows for years because we could not promote fast enough, and we valued a chief in the seat more than we did a promotion. And that's prior me, Schneider, Plossel. I mean, this is years back, right? And so getting to a point where we understand, like, this is our career path, and that goes into 362617, which we're trying to publish right now at AFRS. This goes to the piece of how do we promote, and what do we value? We are a career field. I mean, no matter which way you look at it, we're authorized 33 chief master sergeants, right? And we have a chief master sergeant prioritization plan. And as folks retire, you know, so how the plan works is the bottom is I don't want to say it's the least important position, but it's least to most, meaning you have to have somebody in this top position. We need somebody in RSO. It's a given. You have to have somebody in RSO. You have to have somebody in RSX, or the whole process doesn't work. Whereas a squadron chief in, you know, San Antonio, I mean, we got 18 chiefs in San Antonio, right? So is it as important as the RSX role or the RSO role? So that drives the entire assignment process for us. So we know our vacancies, we can project our vacancies out. And that's kind of the role we've taken as we're being more deliberate in development and the movement and the selection of, you know, individuals for positions. We've got to take the career pyramid back into action and say, okay, so we have 4 positions that are going to vacate this year for Chief Master Sergeant. So how many do we want to cross-flow? What are the reasons we want to cross-flow, right? You know, you look at, you know, 36 not 36, 30, 49, their crossflow chief just retired, right? And we got a hardship case, a humanitarian that came up and said, hey, can we put somebody in this position for a year? We have a humanitarian. And we said, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're not shutting it off by any means, but understand that for the career recruiter force, we have to be purposeful about who and how we employ our chief master sergeants. And again, it's very sticky with feelings, guys. Like it's, somebody from here is going to leave with the recruiter rumor network, and it's going to be like, Chief Daigle doesn't like crossflows. And I just want to be clear, like, it's not about that. It's about how do I get Master Sergeant Parsons to the next step for his promotion and to the next position to utilize all of the knowledge that he's gained over the years to take us a little bit further, right? Hopefully it's not too sticky. You guys saved all the sticky questions for me. Did y'all hit Frank with these questions?
No, we appreciate you answering these sticky questions. And I appreciate you making that push for me, Chief. You brought up EWI earlier. To my understanding, I believe we had someone that was selected for EWI this year. Is that correct?
No, we didn't. We did not get anybody past the board. And so I sat down with General Thomas and we had a long chat about it. And so he's coming here to DC, I want to say in May. And I set the appointment for him to meet with the SES over A1D, because we've got to talk about this, right? We jumped in at the very last minute and we took everything we had and we threw it at the wall. We weren't prepared. I mean, I'm just gonna say it. I mean, I told you guys about the writing that we're doing, right? That we don't understand. Big Air Force doesn't understand what top flight chief of the quarter is, right? It's not an Air Force term. Like, once we get better at our writing, General Thomas can advocate with air staff and be like, hey, like this, we need this, and this is why we need this. We need to be able to take things from industry and bring them back and utilize them to grow and get better in the talent management, human resourcing aspect. So we did not have anybody picked up, but I don't foresee that being a norm. I think that was just a kind of a first year, us getting our feet wet. We figured out where we're at and we know where we got to go.
Perfect. The follow-up to that you already answered, so I'm going to skip on to the next question. Next question is, to be clear, we can update the SURF to reflect duty position for an interim period without receiving an EPR for that period, correct?
Well, you got to go, and this is going to be way more Chief Rawls's lane when it comes managing your assignments, right? Like from my aspect, I mean, you can, if it's a extended period of time. Where we lose track in that is Sergeant Parsons, an EA recruiter, I dub him out to be a flight chief, right? So just local, 30 days, man, you can be the flight chief. You put it on your SURF, and then all of a sudden, Chief Rawls gets a MOI for you saying you're volunteering to be a senior trainer, right? And do you have that breadth of experience to go be a senior trainer and be effective at it? We all like to think, yeah, well, of course I have everything that's needed to be a senior trainer. I've watched my senior trainer, like, he's not that good, right? And we just got to be honest, like that experience that we gather. I mean, you're talking to a guy who did 3 tier 2s, right? Like, I would not have been a flight chief and been able to lead my airmen without the understanding I had as a trainer, as an ops guy, and be successful. There's a piece that we have to value of the experience. And it's hard because, I mean, we all like to, especially, 2021, you go to Facebook, everybody's like this, right? Like everybody's patting themselves on the back. How great I am, right? Look at this picture, guys. I'm at the beach and like, I don't have any acne. I know the filter kind of makes me look like an alien, but it's okay, right? And we've got to get back into the aspect of like, I need this skill set to carry on this mission, right? Everything from, the way we do job distribution, as we want to call it, to how we train our airmen, what we're training our airmen, it's really important. And if we don't get that right and we don't build the experiences, we're not going to continue the path of success. So I ask everyone here, I mean, like, that's got to be important to us. Making it to be a chief is great, guys. Yeah, it's phenomenal. But if I can't answer the mail whenever I have the senator sending emails or the chief master sergeant of the Air Force calling saying, hey, what's going on here? Right? Because I don't have the experience. What does that do for the entire team? Right? So we got to get back to valuing the experience. If you get a chance to go intern, man, hats off. Like, take that experience, that opportunity, and do the best you can do. Try to learn as much as you can, because it's going to play, down the road. It's going to have second and third order effects. Down the road, you're going to look back, and I laugh to this day. Mr. Plaza works on the SAF MR side, so the opposite side of where I work, right? And I remember conversations that Senior Master Sergeant Plaza and Tech Sergeant Daigle had when he was my pro suit, right? And I think about conversations like, wow, man, that really makes sense now. Like, you didn't make sense when I was a flight chief. Like, I just thought you were just and Craig, if you're watching this, I apologize. I just thought you were an a-hole, man. Like, I didn't understand that perspective, and it's really important that we gather that level of experience. Get your feet wet. Take it in to make yourself better versus how do I get myself promoted? You getting better is going to get yourself promoted.
Excellent. And Chief, I apologize for the sticky questions, but you just opened up an extra one. We do have some very successful tier 1 to tier 3 flight chiefs. Now, with what you just mentioned regarding valuing the tier 2, are we maybe pushing too hard for the tier 1 to tier 3 and taking out some of the players that maybe are second, third time tier 2s that haven't progressed through the ranks yet, that would make possibly a good flight chief, being given the opportunity, but being kind of pushed out based on the rank aspect? Can you give us your thoughts on that?
Man, this is super sticky, because we really get into everybody's feelings here, right? And just to be honest, I think the system we have of all of the players that are involved with your progression is super important. I mean, you think about it. As a tier 1 recruiter, your flight chief, your first sergeant, your pro suit, your chief, and your squadron commander, 5 people are all involved in that process of where you are best fit and suited with the knowledge you have to move forward. I don't know that. I mean, you think about it, there's 5 people in that chain that are direct report about your talent and vectoring you. I'm not sure that there's a better process. There's no one person. It's not me just saying, hey, Sergeant Parsons is the dude. Like, promote that dude to chief today, right? Do we value that 1 to 3? There are some very successful 1 to 3s, man. There are. I mean, maybe I wasn't that quick. Maybe I enjoyed the full experience over a career, and maybe that's the piece where I really feel that getting that experience helped me dive into every job I've had. I mean, even coming up here, guys, like, me and Chief Schneider used to have lots of conversations, and we still do have conversations, but he told me right before I got started, he goes, it's not your fault you don't know. It's not your fault. And I was like, man, like, nobody prepares you to walk into this building, right? They don't, because I mean, there's everything from every different way. And I say that if I wouldn't have had the experiences I had, I wouldn't be able to take care of the small fish, right? I wouldn't be able to handle the senator who's emailing because Johnny was booked for a job. He was going to EAD on ship day. He was 2 pounds underweight, right? I wouldn't be able to handle that information. I wouldn't be able to paint the picture for him to explain to him what would happen, right? And so I think it's super important that gaining all of that experience, and I don't know anybody that would, I mean, 1 to 3, 1 to 2. I think there's some of us that aren't ready for that position, and there's some of us that maybe we're great. I mean, just because we're going to a tier 2 doesn't mean I'm less of a person, right? I think it's some of that piece, like, okay, man, like, you did great. You were a great recruiter in this, and I'm not going to say somebody's own because somebody will get upset, but Chief doesn't like this zone. You know, this booming metropolis, like you were a great recruiter in this city with 10 million people, right? Let's make him a flight chief, but let's put him in Minnesota, right? They may not be ready for that. And I think that's really where the 5 people had that developmental role and to say, you know what, like this is great. So I see Katie just wrote here, I jumped from 1 to 3. Having MEPS experience for 2 years was invaluable. You learn a lot from that between tour 1 and 3. And the folks that I know that went from 1 to 3, they usually say like, wow, that was a pretty steep learning curve. Not that they weren't successful, because that's usually involved in the person, right? Like that's a trait of an individual, is I can climb this hill, right? Hope that wasn't a sticky answer. It probably was. I see Proc over
No,
here.
it was a great answer, Chief, and you're hitting all these curveballs. I appreciate it. You mentioned the bullet writing as a sticking point for EWI, and I think that it brings up a greater. We got to widen our aperture when it comes to writing. Period. We got to understand what the purpose of what we're doing is, right? Who is our target audience? If this is an EPR, if this is for EWI, if this is for a 1206, is it FY awards? Is it CY awards? Target audiences are different.
Yeah, but at the same time, guys, you got to think about what's the big impact on the Air Force. Like, how are we getting to the point of what we do is contributing to the Air Force mission? All right, what is the Air Force mission? Is it to get awards and hang them on your wall? No, it's not. Right? The Air Force's mission is to fly, fight, win, kill bad guys, right? And provide humanitarian relief to the good guys. You know, I went through this course a couple of weeks ago here in DC, and it was the National International Leadership Studies, and it kind of even opened my eyes. And as we talk about this, you know, some of the things that are going on in the world, right? And our near peer competitors. And if you guys aren't watching the news, you're failing yourself, right? And I'm not saying buy into everything they're saying. I'm saying listen to the unearthed message that's coming across. Listen to China and Russia are playing war games off the coast of China, right? What are our interests in China? Let's listen to the amount of debt that the United States carries, that China, I mean, and then you guys may have heard they had the ambassadors for US and China in Alaska, and the US ambassador, he said something, I don't remember what it was, and the Chinese guy, well, hey, like, that's cool, but the United States does not speak from a position of power anymore with us, right? Guys, that's huge. Like, that's strategically how the US is being perceived by its, you know, adversaries is huge. And I'm not saying you got to put in there like, you know, Johnny EAD 12 people and we saved the world from China. That's not it. But we have to understand, and we have to be able to speak in these terms that are relevant to the Air Force. Top recruit of the quarter is not relevant, guys. I'm gonna tell you right now, like that doesn't, you know. And when I got one package, and I don't mean to put anybody on blast that's in here, but I think it's important that we share. It was like top flight chief of the quarter, and so we started doing the math. All right, and man, I'm gonna pull up a calculator because I don't want to do street math in front of y'all. Y'all laugh at me, and this is being broadcasted. But how many squadrons are there? Right, 27 squadrons. 27 squadrons. How many quarters are there? 4 quarters. So you were in the top 108 recruiters of 1,000, so top 10%, right? Why can't you write that? Top 10% recruiter, right? There's more impact there, and that's what I'm saying. You guys, we're leaving a lot of meat on the bone when it comes to writing, you know, then tying it to what we do. I mean, of those 108, were they all, again, this is where it gets people's feelings hurt, were they all plumbers? Or were they all PJs, right? So we've got to really articulate our message to hit the target audience. And if we're not, then we're leaving a lot of meat on the bone here. And we can't be surprised. We're like, we recruited, didn't get nobody accepted to EWI. That's partially our fault. It's partially every senior NCO and recruiting service. Like, we own this. This is not General Thomas, Colonel Scott, Colonel Rosa, Colonel Trosper. This is the stripes. This is all the enlisted folks. We let our own people down. We have to fix this.
Absolutely, Chief. And earlier you were talking, and you kind of said it without saying it, but accelerate, change, or lose, right? That's something that Big Air Force is telling us right now, and EWI could help with that, but we're kind of in a catch-22. We gotta accelerate that change with the process of getting somebody there in order to get the actual impact back to our service. So I think overarching message from what I keep hearing from you is understand priorities of Big Air Force and DoD and be able to articulate that. And I think as senior NCOs, that's something we all need to get better at.
And I'll go back, talent management, Proc hit it. I'll go back to what Matt Schneider used to tell me. He's like, it's not your fault you don't know. It's not. But this is where we grow each other. This is where we have these conversations right here, and we ask questions to better understand. And sometimes we got to get over our own thought processes. Proc talks about talent management. This is a fight. Proc, like me and Matt are trying to attack it from both ends, right? And so there's a piece of data-driven accessions that the Office of Secretary of Defense is working with all components, right? So it's not just me. And we're trying to figure out what's the right path and what's the right mixture of folks to bring in, right? Like the Air Force, we say that we should mirror society. Well, if you look right now, society is 13% African-American. I'm just going to use this because it's fresh off the top of my head, right? In 2050, it's going to be 23% African-American, right? So what do we have to do in recruiting service to keep up with society between 2021 and 2030, 9 years? Well, we've got to deliberately meet, I don't want to say meet a metrics because it's not about a goal, right? But we've got to deliberately manage the talent, but also manage our sessions. And it's not by saying, well, 30% of everybody you enlist has to be African-American. That's not the answer, right? It goes into the job placement process. This is one of the big ones we're fighting right now is, can anybody here, and if you can, please come up online. Can you say that we place the right applicant in the right position 100% of the time? Please, somebody. And if we can't, we're not doing it right. And we have to be able to own that and say, you know what, you're right. I tell you, 1 Alpha 0, there's 147 of them we assessed last year. And for me to sit in front of, General Kelly and A1 and CSAF and be like, yes, sir, we got 100% of the talent in the right place at the right time. There's 147 1 Alpha 0s that we booked last year, right? There's 900 plus recruiting offices. So are we positively sure that all of those 1 Alphas went to the right individual? That we placed the talent in the right position? Right? I'm not 100% sold on it, but that's why I'm asking. If you guys are, please come online, school me, because I may be missing something. That talent management piece, that talent that, whenever we're sitting down with our recruiters and we're teaching them how to, properly place talent and assess talent, you got to have these conversations. I got it. You got this applicant with, fill in the QT and all you have is this job. And he didn't list it, but he really wants to be in the airport, but he's not the right talent. He got a 32 East and he's got a DUI and a possession of marijuana charge. And we put him in his 6th choice. What does that tell us? I mean, do you think that he's going to be a good suit for the Air Force? And as leaders, we all have to be able to have that honest conversation with that airman and say, you know what, this probably isn't the right guy at this time. Let's have a conversation with him. Not saying we got to throw him to the side and say, no, you can't be in the Air Force. But we've got to find what the best place for him is. They did a study through the racial disparity report, and they looked at the number of individuals that we bring in on waivers. And 60% of the people that we bring in on waivers get in trouble while they're in the Air Force. And I'm talking Article 15 or higher. I'm not talking LLCs and LORs, right? So what does that tell us? 60% of the people that we bring in are having troubles serving in our Air Force.
Sorry, Chief, I was taking a note on that. That's a pretty significant number.
Good, man.
So yeah, a dull pencil is better than a sharp mind, right?
I'm with
So you sit in a critical seat as a CFM, and you sit there with the other CFMs. You talk about getting the right talent in the right place. Even before we came up online, you said, how do we get the message out to the field? How do we get the message out of what's the right talent for each career field? Because as a former air trans, I can't tell you what the right person for a cop is. I can't tell you what the right med tech looks like. So how do we get that from each career field down to the field saying, hey, this is the best fit for an airborne linguist. This is what true talent management looks like. And we really want this qualification. This obviously we've got the qualification listings, go, no go. But if we're missing the mark, if we've got someone that is 100% qualified based on what the CFM of that career field is saying, but they're maybe not a good fit for that, how do we fix that disconnect? How do we get that down to the
So
tactical level?
there's a few pieces that tie into this, and it comes again of sharpening our skill set and sharpening our trade and what we do, right? First thing is we have to make sure our airmen are aware of what these career fields do. And I remember, I'll go back to my post-traumatic syndrome days of when I was an EA recruiter, right? And my flight chief had a flight meeting, and we sat down and he wrote just random topics on a postcard, right? And everybody got up and had to do an impromptu presentation. And I'll never forget, mine was shopping carts, right? And I say that, I knew nothing about shopping carts, right? And he's looking for our ability to be able to get up and speak intelligently and tell us what we know about shopping carts. Are we doing this with our airmen? Are we teaching them about, if you were air trans, are you having, increasing your knowledge and schooling your airmen on what is it that the security force is looking for? How do you find that? How many cops are in this room? Right? There's probably a lot of them. Look, probably call Proc. Proc will answer the phone and he will talk to all your guys about being a cop. And so there's that piece of knowing what the career field does. And we're taught how to read people. You sit down from somebody, if somebody's already kind of confrontational with you, maybe don't believe you, maybe standoffish a little bit. We can read body language, but there's also the aspect of the AFWIN. And you guys are like, oh, AFWIN. Yeah. The AFWIN is built to help guide that individual for where their interests are. They ask them a question like, do you like tinkering with things? If they put no, they're not going to get a 2A. They're not going to get one, right? And I mean, that's an example. That's pretty broad, right? There's multiple questions that they're going to ask within there to see where their interests lie. And then from where their interest lies, where's it going to guide them? So we have to be able to use that. That's how we provide the best guide. Because if they're not interested in 2A and you place them in a 2A, do you think they're going to stay? No. Probably when they get out, probably about E5, E6, maybe first term airman.
Perfect. And you brought up a great point, Chief, and I'm going to use that as a plug for our organization. Networking. That is a huge benefit to this organization. So if you're not plugged in, get plugged in. Not just this organization, obviously. If you're watching this and you're not a senior NCO, get plugged in with the 5-6. Obviously, there's ways to get plugged into your local base, and that's another way to help with understanding other career fields. But get plugged in with other recruiters as well, other folks within AFRS, because our target audience isn't just recruiters. We've got personnelists that are CSS. We've got comm folks. We all can help each other out, right? Just because you're in a different AOR doesn't mean that me or Proc or Chief Daigle doesn't have some sort of tool or feather in the cap to be able to assist you in your AOR. So sorry to put a plug in, but
no, Recruiter Rumor Network, squash that, dude. It's senior NCOs, like, squash it. If you hear a rumor, call somebody who's really close to it, right? Call somebody who's really close to it. And if you don't know who to call somebody you're really close to, and they may know who to guide you towards. Call me, call Chief Rawls, call Chief Farrell, because I think what you'll get out of there is you'll get like, well, hold up, like, let's peel this back, because I've heard many, like, I've gotten phone calls about, well, I heard vectoring is just going to select the person in the location. Like, no, like, vectoring is about taking your talents and what you need to round out that talent. So if you got a life full of training background, that's great. Training very well, but to make you a little more adaptable, I probably want to give you some ops background, right? So now you have training and ops background. That's going to ultimately put you in a better position so that you have a better understanding of everything that's going on versus just this one little piece over here. So if there's a rumor, email, like, I'll squash them right there. I won't squash it. I'll either validate or squash it, one or the other.
Awesome. Thank you, Chief. I know you have another meeting coming up. So I want to give you an opportunity for any parting words before you have to jump onto that meeting.
No, I really appreciate it, guys. And I really appreciate the good, honest, frank conversation here. And I encourage you all to go have the same frank, honest conversations with your airmen. The world's not going to get any freer, right? And we have a lot of challenges that are facing us. And honestly, guys, it's these stripes, and it's your stripes, they're going to carry this, right? It's way bigger than just, did I get a silver badge or am I Olympiad this year? It's way bigger than that. And as senior NCOs, we have to be able to think at that level and operate at that level. And if we don't understand that level, we have to be able to raise our hands and be like, hey, new guy here, school me, right? And don't be afraid to learn. I really appreciate everybody coming here today. And, again, I'll put a shameless plug for my email, kevin.daigle.1. If there's something you need, hit it up. There's a lot of folks in this room that I see a lot of names that are amazing leaders, guys. It's on our backs. What we do with it, it's all up to us. I appreciate you guys. Thanks a bunch for having me today, guys. Here if you guys need anything.
Chief, thank you so much for coming to talk to us. This is invaluable. I wish we could do this more often, but like you said, it's important that we get these tough conversations and we get the message down to the field. The tactical and operational levels need to be able to understand the way forward. So thank you on behalf of the top three for having this time with us. And hopefully we can continue doing this with the new council and bringing you back online, because having the CFM is always good to get out to the field.
Love you guys. Y'all take care and see y'all soon.
Appreciate it, Chief. With that, I'm going to transition over to Sergeant Walker, who's going to introduce our next presenter. Over to you, Sergeant Walker.
All right. Thanks a lot. I know Chief Daigle already signed off, but if he watches this later, wanted to echo thanks for everything today, Chief. You spoke on AFRS talent management and just honest feedback to one another. And that's a great transition point into our next conversation. We're going to be bringing on next Senior Master Sergeant Procaccino. He is a Senior Master Sergeant that made rank as a flight chief, very successful individual in AFRS, prior Blue Suiter, Gold Badger. It's got a lot to bring to the table. This next piece of today's PES is intended to create open dialogue. We're going to step away from the question and answer session, and we want to allow people to ask questions, and we want to try and dig a little deeper as senior NCOs to find out what we can do better to manage the talent of our folks. So with that, I'll open it up to you. The floor is yours, Senior Proc.
Thanks, Caleb. I appreciate it. Always a pleasure. I love the top three, But like Caleb said, I'm Jason Procaccino, currently ops chief here at the 332nd in Nashville. Been a part of the top three for about 5 years now. Been all over the place, been in recruiting for about, now Chief Daigle got me doing simple math, but since 2006, you guys and girls can do the math. So a while. And here to talk about talent management, and I don't want you to be confused with the talent management of acquisitions and recruiting. This is talent management from within AFRS, for our very own force. Any questions that pop up, throw them in the text, open dialogue. So this is, you ain't got to worry about waiting to the end for a Q&A. Throw a question up there. If you want to chime in, raise your hand. If you want to give me praise, feel free. If you want to tell me I'm wrong, feel free. I love taking feedback. So I want to start off with something Chief Goldstrom said yesterday. You're going to remember the first thing I say and the last thing I said. And I actually like that. I've heard it before, but when he said it, it kind of resonated with me, and I wrote it down on my notes. So I'm going to start off with a quote from a great, great man, Colin Powell, right? So he says, one of the greatest talents of all is the talent to recognize and to develop talent in others. That kind of fits perfect into what I'm going to be talking about today. So again, that's a quote from Colin Powell. Pulled it right off of Google, nothing special about it. But yesterday, they also talked about recruiting and how it has changed, just like the Air Force. Chief Goldstrom was talking about the Air Force was different when he joined back in the 90s. The Air Force was different when I joined in 2002. What we have to make sure is that we're incorporating this with our very own management as senior and leaders, as flight chiefs, ops chiefs, senior link leaders, you name it. Any leadership position, you have to make sure that we're starting to adapt to the change that we're all seeing in the culture. The next thing I want to talk about is how what I'm looking for here, excuse me, how talent management was used effectively on myself. And the greatest example I can use is the birth of this very own top three that you all see today. So, long story short, not going to give you the sob story, but Tech Sergeant Proc over in Manhattan, New York City, as an HP recruiter, working for a Chief Stoy and Chief Kovac. Some of you know that name. They were around recruiting for a very long time. Came up with an idea that we could use some kind of private organization within our squadron and group. So they reached out to individuals like myself, Gervasio Maldonado, Wayne Parsons, Thaddeus Cook, Jessica Martinez, who I think, I'm not sure, I don't even think she was an 8R. She was, forgive me, but I think she wasn't an 8R. And she was a CST, so we brought someone in that wasn't even an 8R. And then we had a Brandstetter. So, those are the founding fathers. And what I'm trying to point out is Chief Kovac, Chief Stoy, Chief Core, our chiefs at that time, they were using that management of the talent that they seen that could potentially bring something with impact and that could benefit the command. So I am a product of effective talent management. It was used on me, and it was very successful. So I challenge you all to kind of have that same thought process. And as I go through my notes today, again, open dialogue, chime in, use them, write down. If you can find one thing that makes sense to you, that's going to help you with managing the talent of others. And don't just think this is a leadership thing. You can use it. If you're not leading right now, you will lead eventually. If you're not a flight chief, you may be the president of the 5-6, like Sergeant Turner. You may be the incoming president of a 5-6. You may be an executive council member. You may be a brand new executive council member for the top three. So, these are little nuggets that you can take to help with the overall goal of managing the people that we have within our 8R command. So with that said, I want to talk about the top-down approach. So this is kind of what I use. Again, this is my thoughts off the cuff. Don't want to offend anybody. Again, it's just coming straight from the tap here. And I stole that from the Recruiter's Corner. Sorry if you guys are watching. But top-down approach, know the priorities of Big Air Force, right? So know what General Brown's priorities are, right? For instance, I take priority number 2 and I take priority number 3, right? So I focus on those 2 things. If you don't know, 2 is working with industry. And then number 3 is developing airmen, right? So how am I tying that into Sergeant Proc's talent management? I selected these priorities and I chose, hey, you know what? These are the priorities that I'm going to execute. When I got here as the ops chief for the 332nd, I look at avenues, and you hear it. We talked about it with Chief Rawls and Chief Daigle, how, call a spade. I may be handcuffed. I'm a senior master sergeant. I'm sitting in a master sergeant position. And that's just because there's a lot of logistics involved in that. It's not bashing our leadership with not putting me in a pro shoot role. Rather, this was the best move for me right now to develop me for my next position. Yes, Jason Procaccino can have mixed feelings about that, may not be so happy about it, but my goal was, okay, I'm here, let's deal with it. And I'm going to be the best damn ops chief I could possibly be. And I'm going to make the ops NCOs that work for me the best ops NCOs in the command. How am I going to do that? Well, I selected those 2 priorities. So I'll give you an example of what we did on how I decided to align our ops team from the top down approach. And then you go vice versa. You work from the bottom back up. So scenario, myself and one of my ops NCOs were talking about Air Force Cool. Okay. So we look at it, we're talking about Air Force Cool. We're going to do an Air Force Cool Blitz. So our operations section was going to go get the certifications for Air Force Cool. We started there. I talked to my NCO and I said, hey, extend the invite out to the squadron. Let's just send a little vote out there and see if anybody's interested in rolling with Air Force Cool with us collectively. If anybody out there has done Air Force Cool, or like myself has attempted to do Air Force Cool, I've sat in plenty of briefings. Can't remember his name, but the Air Force Cool dude, he has done briefings for us and they are phenomenal. But for the life of me, when I get onto the Air Force Virtual Education Center, I make it like to step 2 of the Air Force Cool process and I have no idea what to do. So I figured I can't be alone in this process. So let's try to all do this together. So going back to the scenario, we extended the invite out to our squadron and gained insane momentum. Our very own chief, our first sergeant, people were emailing us saying, yeah, I definitely want to do this because our ops team offered to literally hold their hand through the entire process, contact the vendors. Basically, all the individuals have to do is read the material and then take the test. And then they're going to get their SHRM certification via Air Force Cool. So everybody's all about that. It's not lazy. Again, it's called talent management, right? So going on with top down, then down up, right? So Ops NCO decides, let me extend this invite out to the 342nd Recruiting Squadron. We hit up Chief KG, our very own top 3 mentor, and saying, hey, this is kind of what we're doing here at operations. You know, we gain crazy momentum within our own squadron. We want to bridge that OA, EA. We think it'd be a good idea to tie in our OA brethren to take advantage of having someone help you enroll in Air Force Cool and develop you, right? Working with industry, keeping that priority in the back of the mind. Chief Garner loved it. So now we tied the 342nd into our Air Force Cool Blitz. What's next on my list, right? So as you can see, I went from the top to the bottom. So I took those priorities. I walked them down to my very own ops section. And now I'm starting to walk them back up. I did ops section. I did my squadron. Now I did another squadron. I'm going to reach out to group and I'm going to work my way up. And you, ladies and gentlemen, you may or may not see an email come out about, hey, Air Force Cool Blitz, jump on the train. If you want to do it on your own, that's perfectly fine. We're just looking for individuals like myself that cannot figure out for the life of me how to register for Air Force Cool. So I just want to pull people together and do this as a team and collectively go grab a certification for free. So I tell you all that because that is just the mindset of myself when I think of talent management and how I am managing people. I didn't go and in that entire story, and it's not a story, it's facts, but in that entire statement that I just made, you didn't hear me once talk about production, NECs, ship day cans, shuffles, all the op stuff that you know is my daily primary duties here. I didn't say anything. And I kind of want you to focus on that for a second as well. When you speak about talent management, you may need to take the hat off. You may need to take the 8R mindset off, turn it off for a little while and think about how you can manage people, right? People, not airmen. Yes, our job as senior NCOs and for your staffs and techs that are on here, you know, I'm speaking to you all. We don't always have to develop airmen. You know, you want to develop people as well, because the Air Force isn't forever. We all know that. We all know there's going to come a day where we're standing in front of somebody and you're staring at that front row thinking, I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry. Right. So we're all, that day is coming to us all. Be prepared for it. And I feel like as a leader, if you have that opportunity to help people prepare for that very moment, they're going to be thankful. They may forget. They may not know who helped them get certifications. At that point, it's irrelevant. As long as you know that you're doing your very best to help these individuals develop themselves. Again, managing your talent within 8R with a people mindset versus airman mindset. So that's that first line of this conversation. I hope you took something out of that. The next thing I want to talk about is by doing what I just said, right? Focusing on the priority 2, working with industry, right? Air Force Cool, seeking out vendors to get us certifications, which is going to develop airmen, which is priority 3. By focusing on 2 and 3, by default, we're hitting other priorities of the Chief Staff of the Air Force, General Brown, right? So his priority 4 is empowering commanders. So he can empower his commanders, and commanders can empower themselves. But if you really think about it, with effective talent management, you're also empowering your commander, because as a leader, again, going back to my Air Force Cool initiative, I am developing his NCOs and me as one of his senior NCOs, which is creating a culture that's going to help make him more comfortable as the top advisor of the squadron to make those important decisions. He ain't got to worry about, oh man, the morale, are my people getting developed? He or she, don't have to worry about, things of that nature when they have people that are managing the talent below them. It allows them to focus on the stuff that they need to be focused on, the important things, making sure they're helping the airmen that need help, the families that need help, making the decision, making sure we got the money that we need to continue to execute the mission. So as you can see, me focusing on 2 or 3 helps me focus on, priority number 4 with empowering the commander. I want to quote General Brown just to tie it all in, where he says, we can't predict the future, but we can definitely shape the future. He said it during a media roundtable where he presented his 8-page strategic approach, right? And then you heard Wayne say it earlier. You hear Chief Bass beat it down on social media. You've heard Chief Daigle say it: accelerate change or lose, right? Accelerate change. And one thing I want to foot stomp when I say accelerate change is now's the time. Again, falling back to my Air Force Cool initiative, accelerate change. If I am building a vision as a senior master sergeant in the U.S. Air Force to manage my talent and develop them with accelerate change as my goal, who can tell me what I'm doing is wrong? They can't. I am following the priorities and the mission of my 4-star general and Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force. I am focusing on those things. Now, I don't lose sight of my primary duties, right? So I'm not here to tell you, don't worry about what you get paid to do and focus on your extracurriculars and development of professional development. No. We beat up work-life balance. So that's key, right? That's key. Katie Wood says something that resonated with me, and I wrote that down in my notes. Boundaries. Love the word. That's definitely something everybody should, write down. Boundaries. That definitely beats balance, right? Because balance means you're constantly on a surfboard. Boundaries, you're drawing your line in the sand, leaving that phone in the car, doing things of that nature, whatever you got to do. So definitely thank you, Sergeant Witch, for that, because, that's something that inspired me and set up the boundaries and how that can help us all in all become aligned. Being aligned is a key word. You're going to hear me say, you're going to hear me beat that up in a couple more of my topics and discussions and notes that I'm going to be talking about. But that helps you remain aligned. And again, if you look at our mission and vision statements, you can look at them from the AETC level all the way down to your squadron level. If you're doing what you're supposed to be doing for each of those mission and vision statements, in addition to managing the talent of your ops section, of your MEP section, of your LINCOs, or your very own self, then you're doing everything you're supposed to be doing. Yes, you have your promotion bias that's out there. I think our promotion system is fine. I've done actually EFDP panels here in our very own squadron, mock panels, just to kind of educate myself and kind of see what the system is, and it actually proves that the system does work. Okay. So timing, I would say my best advice to everybody is sometimes timing doesn't work in everybody's favor. Do not let that beat you up. Just continue to be the best in your very own position. There's a lot of people on this call. When I went through the participants list, there's a lot of people in this call that shouldn't be in the position that they're in. They should be in another position. But like Chief Daigle and Chief Rawls said, there's more to it. We don't have that bird's eye perspective all times. We're down here looking up saying, hey, what's going on? What am I going to do? I'm ready to make impact at the big level. Now's not the time. Just be ready when they do call you up. Be ready to swing and be ready to hit a home run. And as long as you're prepared to do that and you are succeeding where you are planted right now, only good things can come to you. So that'll be my my tidbit and advice to that section. All right. So now that I kind of beat up that top-down approach, talent management, gave you an example on how it was used on me to create what you see today, the RS top 3. I mean, it started as the Pathfinder's top 3, right? So it grew into something beautiful. I came here as an ops chief. What am I going to do? I looked at the priorities, right? So there's a golden nugget for you when you're trying to figure out what you can do to make impact and better yourself as a leader and better the individuals in your section and your peers. Check out the priorities. They paint the picture for you. Take those priorities and say, all right, boom, how am I going to develop airmen? What can I do? What's a niche? What can I find? I looked at myself first. All right, what are some of the goals? What do I want to do? Air Force, cool. I just see the money burning a hole in my pocket on the AFVEC. That was my goal. Boom. As you can see, heard the story. Now you see where Air Force Cool is at. Right now, we got, probably 20 to 30 individuals that are going to be registered and getting their SHRM certifications. And I only see that number growing as we continue to push out this initiative. I would love for everybody, to jump on this boat because I think it's a great thing. Let's do it as a team. Let's study as a team and let's just get it done and get certified, right? Now I want to go into where should you start, right? So you're like, hey, that's cool, Proc. You sound like you got it all figured out, man. But that's not me. My zone's different. My recruiters, they're not bought in on the process, or I'm a brand new flight chief, or I just got to MEPS, or I don't know where to start. Well, here's going to be my advice on where I think you should start, right? So you all hear the word framework, right? So you got to build a framework. By building a framework, it's going to require you to find out what your very own strengths are. Okay. With that said, it's going to demonstrate what you can provide to the talent you're trying to manage, i.e., your credibility. If I'm not going to tell, Wayne how to fix an aircraft, and Wayne's not going to tell me, how to give a post briefing on an M16A2 rifle. I know I just kind of showcased my age, but the last time I was a cop, that's the weapons we were carrying. But, so apples and oranges, right? But if I have credibility and I was augmented and Wayne was augmented to security forces, he's going to learn that post briefing. He's going to know about the weapon now. And now he's going to know how to give a briefing and he's going to have credibility. So if he wants to tell me, hey, no, Proc, the maximum effective range of the M16 is, 3,600 meters, I'm going to be like, yeah, I believe you. But if you were never an augmentee, I look at you like you were crazy. Like, dude, what do you know about, this weapon? So going back to the talent management thing, as a leader, as a peer, or as an individual, build up your credibility. You see so many times initiatives, private organizations, people starting things, great organizations, great intent. And I love it. I love seeing it on social media. But the one thing I got to say is these people that are doing it and that are behind it, what is their credibility? What have they done? What are their goals? What's their, 5-year plan? What's their goal for this organization? What's their mission? What drives them? And you're going to hear that from two really great organizations, brand new. I'm talking brand new baby organizations coming out the ground, Wired and WASM. We are all service members, and Women in Recruiting Empowering Dialogue. 2 brand new ones. You're going to get to hear that. You're going to get to hear who they are, what they're about, what their focus is, what their goal is, what they want to achieve. For anybody else that's looking at doing things like that, ask yourself, what's your credibility? You know, I was reading this one book. It's a little black book. It's called Little Black Book of Connections. And, you know, you heard Wayne say when he was talking to Chief Daigle about networking, right? So connections is key. And one of the little passages that I highlighted in the book, it said, you want to know who you are? Google yourself, right? Type your name in Google, see what comes up. If you don't like it, fix it, right? When you do a job, when you go for a job interview, you're a civilian, you go on LinkedIn, there's a lot of people doing research on you. Especially if you're out there exploring or flirting with getting other jobs or getting a part-time job or doing something extracurricular outside of your primary duties in the Air Force, you know, they're looking you up at all times, kind of seeing what you're about. I say that to use that example as an example to, again, find out what your credibility is. What are people going to be thinking about you when you want to launch an Air Force Cool initiative? Do you have the background for people to say, you know what, that's a great idea. I want to jump on board because I see it being executed from start to finish. You see a lot of awesome projects. You see a lot of awesome ideas tank because it sounded great, but you just didn't have the momentum and the commitment and the buy-in to execute it from start to finish, because it's a lot of work. Anybody in here that has done it, anybody in here that's been a part of something of that nature, it's a lot of work and you don't get paid for it. It is 100% commitment, right? So keep that in the back of your mind. Earn that credibility. You want to make sure that the individuals that you're earning this credibility for are never forced to look for outside growth. Now, I tread that water carefully because I constantly reach out to people outside of my chain of command and outside of my immediate network and people that I have worked with. And I reach out to them because why? They're credible, right? So I'm not saying don't let your people reach out to that. Mentorship's different than what your focus is on managing that talent. You should have your individuals that you are managing reach out to the people. Like Chief Daigle said, he made the example about a cop, call Proc. I mean, to be honest, I couldn't tell you, I haven't been a cop for a very long time, but you get the idea. You know, reach out to the people that are doing those things or who just did it. If somebody calls me tomorrow and says, hey, I'm thinking about starting a nonprofit 501c, who should I call? I'm going to say, call Master Sergeant James LaVille. He just started, like legitimately just started one in San Antonio, you know, compared to when, you know, we did it for the top 3 back in the day. Things might have changed. I don't know. Different states have different rules. I know that if you're going to start one in San Antonio, you call James LaVille, he's going to be able to walk you through the process from A to Z, right? So there's that network, there's that connection. So encourage those to reach out to develop, because ultimately that helps you with your goal with managing your very own talent. Going back to an analogy to paint the picture, every piece of machinery in the United States Air Force, it requires maintenance. And for the maintainers out there, you all know what I'm talking about. I'm not a maintainer, so I do not know what is required and what maintenance plans are. What I do know is that they're planning for recruiting service, right? But the point of that is if you neglect that maintenance that's required, plane ain't gonna fly. Plane ain't gonna fly. Mission ain't gonna get done. Not meeting the priorities of our 4-star. Things ain't gonna get good. People are going to be removed, demoted, etc. Bad Air Force, bad climate, bad culture, bad scenario all around. But by performing maintenance and keeping the machinery up to date, now for this example, the machinery is the human being that you are managing. Make sure that us as leaders, we are performing the maintenance that's required. So let's go into an example. What's maintenance, right? Feedbacks. And if my old supervisors hear me saying this right now, they'd be turning in their graves, right? So they're like, feedbacks, all right, cool. And I'll be honest with you, I'll be the first one to say, I 100% regret not taking initial feedbacks as serious as I should have when I became a first line supervisor for the first time. I checked the box, and I did it. I did it the way I was supposed to do it, but I regret not diving deep into an initial feedback, because now that I do dive deep in during initial feedback, my troops are, kicking down doors, taking names, getting promoted, winning awards, because I'm digging, I'm investing that time in my human that I am managing to find out what their goals are, what their quirks are, what they want, what they need. All I'm doing is finding the answers to the test, right? So the answers to the test, ladies and gentlemen, are in those initial feedbacks. I know and I'm not speaking for everybody, and think what you want of me, but again, I wasn't a supervisor. I was a supervisor for the first time in 2017. I've been in the Air Force since 2002. So it's 15 years in the Air Force before I actually got the chance to supervise. So those first initial feedbacks was like personnelists calling me up. Hey, Sergeant Brock, you got those initial feedbacks done? Oh, nope, got to get them done. So boom, shoot out an invite last minute to all my recruiters. And hey, we got to do these initial feedbacks, answer these questions. Then we're going to sit down real quick. I'll give you my expectations. Boom, send them back to the personnelist. So you can see where I'm going with that. I did what I was supposed to do. I did conduct my initial feedback with each and every one of my recruiters, but was it effective? Was I really giving them the time to give them direction? Was I actually hearing them out on what their goals were and how they think that they're performing in the unit and what they think the squadron could do better? Those are all the answers right there. So this form is actually telling me, all right, this is what you need to be doing to effectively manage our talent. We get lost in talent management sometimes because it's just the nature of the beast with recruiting. Us 8Rs, by those who've been in the game for a while, production is where it's at, right? That we're grinding. Talent management to the 8Rs is my depth. People I got to find. In HP, it's, finding that, that doctor, that architect, that's all you're worried about. That's fine. The flight chief or the leader or a peer who is focused on development should help that person find those boundaries and gain that WLB to manage them and to focus on not just those areas. Because we all hear the horrific stories of people who are dead set on production and neglect the family, neglect their self, neglect their mind, their body, their mental state. We hear it all the time. We see it all the time for everybody who's been in a long time. So just make sure, no matter what level you're at, from the NCO tier up to the senior NCO tier, make sure you're part of this talent management process. All right, so when you're making this talent management process your own, so we talked about, again, building the framework, making sure that you're credible when you do it. The credibility is going to go a long way. By making it your own, that credibility is going to be key, because now you can get everybody bought in on it. Before trying to sell the framework to anybody, you got to make sure people are bought in on you. People, will rally up behind you. And going back to my Air Force Cool Blitz, I told my NCO, I said, hey, man, worst case, if people don't want to get on this train, our entire operations section is going to be certified. We use our Air Force Cool, right? So there really isn't a bad scenario. I'm still developing. I am an ops chief. I am developing my ops NCOs. That is my primary duty. If I can get everybody else on board while I'm developing my ops NCOs, that's just a victory, small victory. The more people I can get, the larger the victory is. But at the end of the day, if people are just like, oh, no, that ain't going to work, they're just bullet chasing, they're just looking for 1206 stuff, he just wants to be the most powerful person in the world, that's not the case. Because again, at the end of the day, my two NCO, my one senior NCO and my NCO is going to walk away from the United States Air Force as a certified senior human resource management certified on their resume. So we got a bullet on their personal resume, not military resume. That's going to help them possibly and hopefully separate themselves from the peers. All right. Side note, I put side note here in my notes, and you don't need to be the smartest in the room. Okay. I want to foot stomp that. Getting credibility, you don't need to be the smartest person in the room to gain the credibility. I think the key to gain credibility and to gain buy-in and to gain people's trust is 2 words. They start with a C. It's commitment and consistent, right? So, and that's my Air Force bars challenge for you out there. I just rhymed. That's about to the extent I can go. But commitment and consistent. If you can do those 2 things, you don't need to be the smartest person in the room, because again, managing your talent, you're pulling things from our chief staff of the Air Force's priorities. You're pulling stuff from the initial feedback. You're pulling stuff from your very own commander's, priorities and commander's emphasis. Know all those things, because those are all the answers for the test that you need to take at the end. And that's just when you're writing your EPRs, you can see what you've done as a leader. Your troops' EPRs reflect on your leadership. That could be my own personal opinion, but when you think about it, when they're doing their EPRs, yes, it's their individual responsibility to make sure they're doing things, but maybe they don't know. Maybe they didn't know. Maybe they don't know how to register for classes. I mean, we do exist out there. There are people that just have no inspirations to go to school. Could you have motivated them? Could you have changed your mind? So, think about those things. Don't worry about being the smartest person in the room. If you're consistent and committed to helping make everybody else around you better, and including yourself, you're good. And I'll caveat that with, find those. You're gonna meet people that aren't interested, right? You're gonna meet people that aren't about the school thing and the awards thing. They want to come to work. They want to turn on the light. They want to sit down. They want to check email. They want to wait for 4 processors to call them, send them the MEPs, get them scheduled, shut off the light, go home to be, mom, dad, husband, wife, whatever. Let them do it. That's fine. They're always welcome to be a part of a movement and an initiative, but just let them do what they're going to do. Naturally, most people will eventually, I think they call them, an NCOA. I may be wrong here, but laggards, right? So just that late majority that just jumps on that train and that boat a little later, because they just want to see things. Oh, wow. Okay, man, wow. 332nd got, 40 people certified with Air Force Cool. Oh, wow. That number jumped up to 80 because we tied in the 342nd. Oh man, now they're up to 100 because the 318th jumped on board, and boom, you start seeing where it's going. Now they're like, you know what? I think I'm going to do it because I tried to register and it was a pain. So I think I'm just going to jump on board. So don't worry about those people. You don't have to worry about pushing them and say, hey, this is where my compass is telling me our team needs to go. You will come in this direction or you're going to fail. That's not the case. Some people have different compasses. Let them head in their own direction. The compass will eventually lead to everybody's true north, right? So just kind of let things naturally merge. You keep your focus and then everything will be fine. But again, I'll foot stomp it one more time. You do not need to be the smartest person in the room. Sometimes the more you educate yourself, the dumber you sound. I'm not going to try to educate myself on a topic that I am not confident in. So just remember that. All right. So one thing I wanted to note as far as talent management, now we're kind of getting more into that open dialogue realm of the conversation versus me giving you my 2 cents on talent management. But I feel like it's critical in this command that we start exposing and highlighting the crazy talent that we have in this 8R career field. It blows my mind sometimes at the things that I see on social media. Like the Air Force Bars channel. There were some videos out there that blew my mind. This most recent video cut that this airman did out on the West Coast that caught Chief Bass's attention, like blew my mind, did it on his own. Like these are the things that I feel like we're not exposing and highlighting them. Yes, they're on social media, and social media is one of the biggest platforms out there, maybe the biggest platform out there, but it dies there, right? Everything dies there. We hit the little thumb button, on Facebook and we comment on it. We hype it up. We say it's dope. It's the best thing since sliced bread. And then we move on to the next video on Facebook, right? and we scroll down, we scroll by it, almost like, you know, when you retire from the Air Force, next person up, right? So I think it's critical that we take this content that we see and expose it and manage that talent that you see. You see this person here. Now, yes, we can't take somebody who's awesome at making videos and tell Chief Rawls, this person needs to be at AFRS marketing because he's better than the AFRS marketers we have down there right now. No, that's not the way we do it. But we can use them in an effective way. A flight chief, squadron leadership can use that talent in an effective way to, again, manage the talent of your very own section / squadron. If I'm a senior trainer and I see that cat that made that video, that dude is going to be, you know, our POC for stuff like that. We're going to expose him. We're going to give him credit for it. He's going to build credibility for it. He's going to build, you know, confidence. And what's that going to do? It's going to bring the squadron up. Bringing the squadron up is going to bring the group up. Bringing a group up is going to bring AFRS up. So, you know, it's a win-win. So focus on those things. We do get caught up. You heard in our conversation with Chief Daigle, and I've had conversations with probably half of y'all that are on this call about the duty titles and the positions. We get caught up in it. That's fine. Those are, and no other way to explain that than sour subjects. If we start focusing on how we can just kick ASS where we're planted right now, I think we'll be just fine, and do things that, you know, kicking down doors and highlighting what I'm doing as an ops chief at the 332nd Recruiting Squadron. And hopefully it influences somebody else to do the same thing, so on and so forth. That's all I can do because I can't do nothing further. This is where I am, and this is where I'm going to be the best at. All right. So on top of that, going to social media and dying, we have to focus on, and I guess it ties into the statement I just made, finding those nooks and cracks of opportunity, right? So nooks and cracks of opportunity, and just blow through it and take full advantage of it. Anytime you see an opportunity in this command, execute, right? Commitment, be consistent, and execute it. How do you execute it? Sometimes you may not be in the position, you may feel like you're not in the position to execute something because you may be a staff sergeant as a tier 2 recruiter, and you're like, all right, you know, I have this cool idea, but, you know, is somebody going to take it away from me? Is somebody else going to take credit from me? That's where that networking piece circles right back, like Chief Daigle. Call somebody, you know you can run this idea by, that's going to be able to maybe bring it and give it a platform to boom. Now off the space it goes. So don't be afraid to execute an idea or run it by people. That's why we have a top 3 and a 5-6, ladies and gentlemen. These are, again, private organizations that are non-affiliates of Air Force Recruiting Service and the United States Air Force. They are official nonprofit 501(c)s. We can help from a human standpoint. We are regulated by our very own bylaws. So it gives us a little bit more flexibility to help develop people in other ways than just the traditional Air Force Recruiting Service way. I'm not saying that that's our goal, is to be like, nope, we're going to do things our own way. No, what I'm saying is that you have a platform at the 5-6 level and the senior NCO level to reach out to people that can give you a Jason perspective instead of a senior master sergeant Procaccino perspective, right? So, you know, think about those things as stuff comes down the pipeline, as you have ideas, run it by. That's what we're here for. We want to see everybody eat at the table, okay? All right, so I'm starting to wind it down now. Chief Goldstrom said it yesterday during his brief that communication is a problem within our command. You know, my ears went up. Anytime I hear, you know, the command chief saying that there's an issue or that he's focused on an issue, I don't want to take it out of text of what he exactly said, but that there was I'll put it to you like this: communication caught his attention, both up and down the chain of command of Air Force Recruiting Service. And when I heard this, I thought that this could also be a what's the word I'm looking for? A reason maybe why development. I'm not saying our professional development is lacking at all, because I think the top 3 and the 5-6, they kind of bridge that gap because of how separated we are as a command. But communication, could that be an issue as to why maybe our young staff sergeants are leaving recruiting, or they feel like they're not getting the development they need, or our tech sergeants aren't getting promoted to master sergeants, or our master sergeants aren't getting promoted to senior master sergeants? Could communication be a piece of that? I don't know. I'll leave that with a question mark. And that's definitely, up for discussion. And I challenge you all to think about that, on how we can work on effective communication. I mean, everybody in this chat has came across effective communication before, whether it is college class or, just sitting in an Air Force PME. You have to effectively communicate. And I think talent management and that are, very good marriage. You have to communicate. Going back to my initial feedback, taking that time to dive deep into my talent and find out how I can make them better, how I can shine the light on them, how I can water them and let them grow. Naturally, I'm going to grow. Naturally, the peers are going to grow. The people who aren't interested will then become interested because they see everybody else growing, that nobody wants to be left behind. The people that want to be left behind usually find their way out. We help them on their way out, or they want to retire from the Air Force, and that's perfectly fine. So focus on that. And again, I challenge you all to think about that, our communication and how we can make it better. And, my goals and hopes, being in a top 3 in a perfect world, is I would love for the top 3 and the 5-6 to focus on that, bridging that communication gap, and hone in on how we can continue to shape this command by better communication, better development. And I think we do a hell of a job now. And I'm excited to see what's to come in the future. But I want to see these things become a focus of just not these organizations, but just leaders across the command, and focus on how you're going to be able to communicate to your talent that you have from within, and make it a better Air Force recruiting service. So as I scroll down in Microsoft Word, I have ran out of space. I'm staring at a white screen now. So I think I hit all the bullets that I wanted to hit. And yeah, if you all have any questions, again, this was open dialogue. If you want to shoot me an email, I'm the only Procaccino, I think, in the Air Force. So seek me out and answer me questions. But without further ado, Caleb, I'll throw it back to you.
All right, Sergeant Proc. Good stuff, man. I wanted to piggyback off of a couple things that you said that really resonated with me. I think talent management is huge in this business. As leaders, we know our people are hungry out there, and it's our job to make sure they're fed. It's not always a perfect system. We may have folks that are in a MEPS position or in an ops position, but that might not be the best fit for them. And just because they're not the best at numbers, or maybe they're in a small MEPS and it looks like they're just treading water out there, we've got to find opportunities. Most of us flight chiefs, we show up at our assignment, or we could even say senior trainers or ops chief, we show up hungry, and we're trying to develop our team, and we're trying to do all the right stuff. And I would be willing to say after 2 years, I think most of us get stagnant a little bit. We feel like we hit that ceiling. We've learned what we could learn. We've milked everything out of that area where the production is great, but we lack what you said, the commitment and the consistency. And that's what I think challenges us. And that's where I'm going to take what you're saying. I'm going to challenge myself to continue growing people. I think that we can kind of overlook some folks in this business, and then we'll see them move on, and you'll just see them do huge things. Maybe you'll hear, hey, they weren't the best recruiter, or that flight chief wasn't the best trainer or MEPS person. But that maybe is something that we should reflect on and think about what we could have done different to manage them, and what else is out there. I like that you show up to a position as a senior where all of your peers that made senior in that same cycle are out there in their pro soups, and you're showing up somewhere and you're finding opportunities, looking for certifications to help people grow and help to grow yourself. But I just wanted to let you know that. And I wanted to open the floor. If anyone has anything, if anybody has ideas of what they're doing that's unique in their area. I mean, we have people on this chat. I saw we've got people from Oklahoma City, Midwest, Southern states, East Coast, West Coast. So I even saw we have a flight chief from Europe on here. So if anyone has something that they've thought of, this is what this is about, share it with the team.
I'll jump in real quick. One thing I'll say, Proc, you hit the nail on the head with initial feedbacks. It starts in the beginning. It doesn't. I'm not talking about the Air Force form. Yes, that's a requirement, but just sitting down and giving an initial feedback and getting, not just giving, but having that dialogue, communication, right, back and forth, understanding what's important to that member. I may have priorities that are important to me, but if that member doesn't care, it's ineffective to that person. So talent management, we have to understand where they want to go, right? So we can help them with their talent. If that's not within the Air Force, if they're here on their last tour, right? Someone shows up, hey, I'm just here to retire. Cool. That doesn't mean that you have to be ineffective, right? It doesn't mean that you're just here to take up space until you push that button. What it does mean is maybe Air Force Cool is a good avenue. Maybe something that you're going to do in this assignment can be carried over into your civilian life. Let's foster that so the Air Force wins, the member wins. You know what I'm saying? Like, but it all starts in the beginning, that initial contact. So great point, Brock. You really brought it home, and I appreciate the honesty. You put yourself out there, vulnerability. Hey, listen, I just in the beginning I checked the box, and we still did it, but hey, we do have some members in recruiting service that their first time supervising is as a flight chief. So definitely appreciate it.
Yep.
All right. Any parting words from you, Sergeant Proc, before I'm going to give it back to Sergeant Parson after you, just so he can introduce our speaker after lunch. I wanted him to highlight a few things to expect from our chief.
Awesome. Yeah, no, but again, I want to thank the recruiting service top 3 for doing what they're supposed to be doing. And that's, shedding light on professional development, on how as a team, we can do our best to help shape everybody that's on here tuning in, and then everybody that's going to check out this professional enhancement seminar on Facebook. My closing words would be what Caleb said, his note that he wrote down. Be committed and be consistent in everything that you do, as a husband, as a wife, as an airman, as a mom, as a dad, whatever title you want to hold. If you can be, consistent and committed in any of those positions, you'll be just fine. But no, thanks again. I appreciate it. If anybody has any questions or wants to chat offline, you all know where to find me. Wayne.
I appreciate you, Proc. Thanks again. We really appreciate it. Obviously, you've got a proven history, right? You talked about setting yourself up for your reputation, and your reputation precedes you. So definitely appreciate the talent management presentation you gave, and the back and forth dialogue, just some of those good nuggets. We do have a great presenter this afternoon as well. Chief Master Sergeant Zachary, who's the senior enlisted advisor for not AFSOC, but US SOCOM, right? So we're talking DOD, Joint Force, Chief of Staff of the Air Force's first priority, right? Another thing is diversity and inclusion. So he's comprehensive review for the implementation team. He's the senior enlisted leader for that at US SOCOM. He's also charged as a senior enlisted advisor for diversity and inclusion. He comes highly recommended from our own command chief, but it's Chief Master Sergeant Robert Zachary. He's going to be on at 1300 Central Time. We talked earlier with our CFM. He talked about understanding Air Force priorities, right? Diversity and inclusion is one of them. One of the initiatives that Chief Zachary is tasked with is widening the aperture of US SOCOM in regards to diversity and inclusion without lowering standards, right? Because we still have a mission. We still have to be the defender of this country, right? We got to be able to take the fight to the enemy and win. So how do we do that? These are great ways to kind of dialogue, understand where the DOD is at when it comes to stuff like this, but also he's a former TACP. SW is a huge part of our mission, right? SW and CS. So this is understanding that network piece we were talking about earlier. This is a perfect opportunity to understand, are we managing our talent, this pool of applicants, towards the right place, right? He has that experience. So obviously multifaceted, be ready for a great dialogue. Obviously Air Force culture is his primary topic, but being a part of USSOCOM, it may be worth your time to maybe ask a couple questions in regards to that SWCS side of it. So with that, I'm going to close us out. Thank you both to Chief Daigle, Sergeant Procaccino for this morning's sessions of the PES. Great talks. I look forward to seeing you all again at 1300 Central. Have a good lunch.